This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today, we are going to review Starfleet Academy Episode 5, Series Acclimation Mil. And honestly, I could just watch the episode 100 more times, but we'll get into that. And we'll start off with a little bit of news, which is a fun story. Like, you wrote this up, and I was unaware of it, so I found it interesting, which is that there's a new Star Trek comic series, right?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. Joe and I wrote this up. Joe, I think when we did the annual roundup, both he and I talked about this series called Star Trek: The Last Starship, and this is the new flagship series of IDW, and it's never been clear if they're trying to tie this into Starfleet Academy, but it is interesting that they shut down two other ongoing series set in the 24th century last year and started up this new ongoing series set in the 31st century, a few months ahead of Academy.
And what I found super interesting when I saw your article that you wrote was that because of last week's episode about the Klingons, and there was this whole piece of history about them that we didn't know, that the comics actually offer, it's not canon officially, but an explanation and a whole story about what happened to the Klingons. And of course, the comics do try to tie in, so they can be made official canon.
Yeah, I mean, they work with Paramount. They are doing an official comic book for Academy, as we talked last week. But basically, this new comic series starts off with the burn. It's in the first few pages where the burn happens, and all the Starfleet ships blow up, and then the Federation creates this new ship, and it's complicated. Girardi Borg is the chief engineer. James T. Kirk is resurrected. He's on board. I mean, it's comic book.
I don't know
Crazy
what
stuff
to
is
say
happening.
about that.
But the first thing that happens is the Klingons, right after the burn, decide to attack the Federation because why not? And Kirk and the captain of this new ship stop them and basically get the Klingons to go home and destroy their own planets.
That's terrible.
And so that's why they have no homeworlds, because they wiped out, they essentially finished the job. So the burn kind of made things bad for the Empire, and then the Empire brought it upon themselves by starting a war with the Federation, and the Federation sort of. And and then this one captain kind of, because what they did is they were using their remaining antimatter warp cores as bombs, and they were dropping them on cities, and Federation said, why don't you go home and do that to yourselves? And they did.
Which is,
it's complicated.
I know. I just have a question. Does the captain get in trouble for doing that?
No, he does not.
Okay, that's weird.
That's why we called it the dark history. Things were ugly during the burn, and it started off ugly, and it only got worse. Hopefully we do see some actual tangible connections between, but it certainly fits. Now it kind of makes sense. So it may, and it's a good comic book. It has some weird stuff in it, as most of the comics do, but I'm enjoying it. The only, we have another update, which is the Shatner cereal thing. The commercial came out, and we have it up on the site. We have the extended 40-second version
where he's actually pooping. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but there's so many poop jokes in it. It's I could just see Shatner getting the script, and he's like, okay, how much are they paying me? I'll do it.
Yeah, I think that's how he looks at every script.
Yeah, it is funny.
Hey, good for him, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big deal ad, so good for him.
Yeah. So let's talk about Series Acclimation Mil. The irony about this episode is a deep dive into Sam, and we still don't know what that means.
I know.
It is her name.
But what's Mil?
Yeah. I mean, acclimation you kind of get maybe, and she says this thing early on in the episode where there's many there's hundreds of iterations of her. I guess every day a new version of her gets, when she wakes up or something. I don't know. It's a little unclear.
Oh, I didn't get that. Okay.
I mean, there's so many little things in this episode. You could watch it 100 times and you'll find a new thing in the background.
You'll find a new thing in the background, a new moment that you like that you didn't realize, you can sit with, a new joke, a new point of emotion. Well, let's go big before we go small.
Okay.
I mean, no surprise, this is my favorite episode so far of the whole show. I feel like this is exactly how to blend the old with the new. You take a brand new character who we want to know more about and tie her to someone who's so deep in the lore and so important to so many people. It was, to me, it was emotional. It was funny, surprising, rewarding. And I cried every time I watched it. I cried again. Like I like to rewatch one last time before we record. And I cried all over again.
It's funny. This is the most satisfying and emotionally moving episode of the 5. I still think episode 4 is a better episode of television, perhaps. But this is very close. I mean, there is a question of, does this episode work if you aren't as impacted by the nostalgia and all that kind of stuff? I think it does.
I have no way to answer that. I realized, I don't know. Like, I don't think anyone would be confused because I think they explain all the important points that you need to know. But I think seeing Cirroc, spoiler alert, too late, for me was seeing Cirroc as Jake was incredibly moving to me. It just was.
And I've seen people call it a cameo. It's not a cameo. It's like Spock Prime in the 2009 Star Trek movie. It's necessary.
Yeah, I agree.
To tell the story of the Sisko without, I mean, here's what they didn't do. They didn't do CGI Sisko, thank God.
Thank God.
They didn't definitively tell his story. They kept it spiritual and ambiguous. And but I don't know. I loved the episode. I cried myself, but it was very nostalgic. And so, you kind of know when you're being manipulated, as it were. But, I liked it. So it doesn't matter that I'm being manipulated.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like it was manipulative.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, they know when they're landing an emotional moment. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with
hopefully every TV show writer knows when they're.
But it wasn't nostalgia porn. In a way, it was a very new and different kind of episode.
Yes.
I don't know if we've mentioned this, but at the end, we're going to roll in some audio. I talked to Tawny and Cirroc. You talked to Tawny in the red carpet. Talked to Bob a little bit about this episode. We're going to roll that in as we go along. But I talked to Tawny about how this episode is structured very differently than a typical Star Trek episode. Now, at first, I thought they were doing a little Data's Day thing, because Data, you remember how Data's Day was structured around, he's dictating a letter to Maddox. And this kind of felt like, at first I thought she was dictating a letter to her makers. And then we kind of found out that wasn't the case, obviously. But then there was all the weird stuff. And they let us know right away when the crayon over CBS production. And there was all of this fun stuff. And Tawny talks about that she was kind of allowed to break the structure a little bit of Star Trek and do these kind of kooky, and a lot of modern shows do that, from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend or whatever. This is not, they didn't come up with something entirely new, but it certainly felt very different from Star Trek.
Yes, they let you know immediately this is going to be a very different kind of episode.
And part of me felt like, because it's being narrated by Sam, we have to question, is she a reliable narrator? Mm-hmm. And that's especially true in the final scene with Jake.
Yes, very much so.
Which they kind of hang a hat on, like, is this real? Is this happening? Who knows? Let's not overthink this. Let's just let it happen.
We're not, right. And normally I get kind of pissed off about that kind of thing, but here I didn't. I thought it worked beautifully. And even though in the end I still felt like there are things unanswered about Sam's origins that I find confusing and I want to know more about her, I just felt like we really got to see her from the inside out in a beautiful way.
I mean, her story is this is kind of a follow-up to all of those rogue hologram stories, or not rogue holograms, but freed hologram stories from Voyager, right? So there's this planet full of holograms. They were created by the organics, some organics who apparently left.
Well, treated them as slaves and then left.
And then they became sentient, and now they're thinking about joining the Federation or joining the galaxy, and Sam is their emissary, which was the whole hook of the episode. And it really, I mean, this showed you how this show is constantly playing the long game, just like, I pointed out the, Jaden's binoculars in the pilot, so obviously the show was pitched at one point, and there was a character named Sam and all of that they eventually changed during the process once they cast Carice.
Good call.
But it also feels like, and Tawny mentions this, and when I talked about it, we keep on talking about Tawny. This is co-written by Kirsten Beyer, who's, they called the keeper of the canon, as it were. They really got to define the Kaskians.
Mm-hmm.
Then the show had to drop bits of that into the first 4 episodes so that it all, made sense and led up to this. So the notion that she was a emissary and all that, it all fit now,
Yes.
Because sometimes shows come along and then they do an episode and they're like, oh, let's finally pay attention to this character. And then they, famously Arium in Discovery.
Right.
When, there's one episode like, whoa, there's a whole lot going on. Would have been nice to pick up, for you to telegraph some of this.
How about Voyager finally remembering that Joe Carey was still on board?
Right. Yeah.
And then killing him right away.
Yeah.
Poor Joe Carey.
Some shows it's impossible to really do this properly, but they clearly had a board on the wall and kind of planned things out for the season.
And they even small things like the banana allergy. The banana allergy for Darum came up a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's
like nuts. Like things that I think are not important come up again. And again, it wasn't important. It was just a fun glitter vomit scene, which I have to say, as my brain rebelled against being amused by glitter vomit, I was just loving the glitter vomit. I wanted to say it was dumb, and then I was like, no, it's great.
Oh, this episode had some seriously stupid things in it. The morning wood, was it the Colbert? Brilliant. There were 2 fart jokes, both kind of about off gas. There was the farting fish,
and then the off gassing.
Yeah, but it was all, obviously Newsome is doing some broad humor, and they let her free, as it were.
But it worked. Like sometimes I get annoyed by things like that, and I just didn't. I was just laughing. Like, in fact, when he leaned over to throw up, I was nervous because I don't like to see throw up. And then it was glitter, and it was so cool. Sorry, I'm really dwelling on the glitter vomit. I'm just imagining the moment that somebody came up with glitter vomit.
So what you have here is this interesting mix, because this episode is wall-to-wall nostalgia. And then in between, there's goofiness and fun and different structures and experimentation. And
college stuff, like what it's like when you're in... I mean, my getting drunk for the first time was before college, as I assume for a lot of people it was. But like, who doesn't remember getting drunk for the first time? And being like, I love love. Like, that is totally. And you're like, this is real. I mean, it was all that stuff was so relatable and had nothing to do with nostalgia.
Yeah. Yeah. This is another example of the deep cut. So they have to go to this bar. They mentioned a bar and a fight that Sisko got into with the Vulcan. That was just a line of dialogue from Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
Yeah.
The name of the bar and the fact that he did get in a fight with the Vulcan. And they have the War College kids here, one of whom's a Vulcan, one of whom's a Romulan, who are just the heels of the show. I'm wondering if they'll ever get redeemed, or if they'll sacrifice themselves in some episode coming up as brave soldiers, or are they just always going to be the jerks who show up every couple of episodes?
No comment. I cannot comment because I've seen the next one.
Okay, well, now we know something's going to happen to those two. Now I feel bad because it certainly felt satisfying when Sam punched the Romulan girl.
Yeah, that Romulan girl is not nice.
Who has a name, Ula? I forget. Doesn't matter. Who cares? And I mean, I may be reading too much into it, but it felt like Sisko punching Q. I think the way the angle they shot it at, and the way she spins around, and they did mention that Sisko punched a Q at one point. Yeah, it's all the college stuff. That's a thing. Like, there's one audience watching this, associating with the young characters, and the kind of there's other little elements like the bull session they have, and then when she goes to visit the Bajor group, which is typical Christian or any kind of religious study group, and she, although I don't know why. Is Occam becoming, a Bajoran worshiper? Or?
No, he said, I'm a joiner. He said, it's my tragic flaw. That's what he said. I love that guy.
Yeah. It's funny. He is the 6th member of the gang, as it were. 7th if you count his sister, but she's at the War College. But because there's the 5 core Academy cadets, but he's always with them.
He's because he's roommates with them and he hangs out with them. So he's
not poster material, which makes me feel like he's not going to make it through the whole season. Is all I'm saying.
I hope he does, because he's so much fun.
Then why not put him on the poster? I mean, come on, he's always there. He's funny. He's great.
Yep.
He's got the jacket. Jaden doesn't have the jacket because he's not a member of the team. Although he plays the mascot, Occam. So does that really count? But he gets the jacket still.
It does. Actually, I like the red hoodies that they've been wearing. I really want one of those red hoodies. I really like them. I think Caleb had it on a lot this time. Like, there's so many different scenes and different places where these things were happening that I kept forgetting it was all in the same episode. Like, definitely Tawny has picked up on that lower decks thing of just cramming stuff in. There's so much in there, but it doesn't feel rushed, and each scene gets to breathe.
Every once in a while, they dive into DS9 and then they go find and do something else because it'd be too much all at the time. So they do the storybook, the visit to the temple.
I love the storybook, and that they're like, wow, Bajoran kids, that's their kind of story. Dark.
Even in the 32nd century.
Yeah, wait till they get that Klingon comic.
Yeah. Yeah. She serves them the food from the...
that was great, too.
And, that food, like it made me hungry.
I just love the way they were all digging in. And then that's where Caleb gets the idea, I can work it out so that you can taste the food. And then that, again, just silly, fun... She has purple hair. She's hearing loud music, whatever's going on. Like, that was just fun. And it was part of the story, even though it could feel like, it's just a goofy thing they added. But because of that, he does figure out how to allow her to feel drunk.
Yeah. And I wonder, this notion of him being able to program her, is that going to come back later in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, it does seem like that's another planted seed.
Yeah, because it's almost like a vulnerability. Like, who could get in there and start changing her code around? Can she do it to herself like the doctor did?
Does she have to give permission? Because it seems like she did give him permission.
He did call it sexy as a friend.
And she liked that. And I just like the flinging of things. Like, he would do something and fling it. Yeah,
well, that's just the 32nd century, man.
I know, but
people fling.
Yeah, Holly. Ake was flinging planets around last week, so...
I mean, I've really enjoyed this show having this structure of the lower deck style when TNG of like the senior officers are doing a big stakes thing and the junior officers are doing the small stakes things, but they're connected. This episode, they stopped doing that. And I think the reason why is because the Sam Sisko story was very high stakes because she had a ticking clock. She was either, solve the problem of the organics, or you're coming home and you're never leaving and we're never leaving. Right. Huge stakes. And then where is Sisko? Huge stakes. Mm-hmm. So Sam's got plenty of stakes. Sam's got a big story. And so we don't need, and it would get in the way to have the faculty people involved in that story at their level. Right. Except, the little bits of advice here and there, but they're not in that plot. So what do you do with them? You ignore them. And so they did something we haven't seen before, which is a B story. a genuine, totally unrelated, wacky B story.
Right. And even though it was played 97% for comedy, there actually was something else going on in that one too that has to do with how Kenrick views Ake, and his deep-seated issue with her finally bubbles up, but surrounded by complete absurdity and making great use of the comedic talents of the cast.
Yeah, once they cut and you see Tig and Bob together, you're like, oh, brilliant.
Here we go.
Because they're obviously pros and very funny and yet very different. Like a good composer, Tawny knew how to write for their instruments, I think, pretty well. So that both of them had funny stuff to do in this scene.
I mean, I talked to both. So when I was at the premiere, and I had Bob on the blue carpet, and then I had Tawny, and I asked them both about this scene because I just thought it was so, with the megaphones and the fish and the whole thing was so nuts. So I want to play what they told me. So I want to talk about episode 5, but first the comedic side. Like, can you talk to me about coming up with all the details for that hilarious dinner scene?
Yes, so I knew having the absolute killer, no filler actors like Tig Notaro and Bob Picardo meant that we could go absolutely wild. I knew that I wanted something that felt inherently very Trekky, and to me, like, this exchange of cultures, even when those, cultural things seem a little bit like odd, but yet like still respecting them, feels very Trek, and is also a great place to mine for comedy when you're trying really hard to not make fun of the weird spoon that some alien culture loves to use, and then to find out at the end that they were actually, pulling one on us by making us learn all these traditions, just felt very like, it felt like a nice little rug pull for a thing that we see a lot of in Trek. And then I really just wanted Bob to always have to talk through that damn megaphone. At one point I did get the note, like, why does he have a megaphone? And Alex Kurtzman came to my defense and just said, because that's the ritual. Like, let's just let it be silly. So yeah, I really I got very few. I feel like everyone left me alone with that story.
Quick last before I go, that wacky dinner scene in episode 5, how much fun was that to film?
Unbelievable. And Tig, because Tig did not know my character I said, when I'm enthusiastic about something, I'm unbearable. So I'm going to annoy the pants off you at close range. And she dug it and stood up to it, and that's what made it funny.
Great.
I think it's interesting how, because Tig has talked about this, she doesn't know Star Trek, she doesn't like, so Bob had to kind of brief her on, okay, my whole shtick is I'm annoying. and she's like, okay, I get that. And she obviously did. Like, little things. I don't know who it was, but like the way she slapped his hand, I don't think that was in the script. Obviously, she caught on very quickly and worked with it.
Oh, yeah.
I think, we've seen a couple of these things where Holly is good enough that she could kind of stick with it, but I'm not sure she's necessarily the funniest person. She's certainly not the funniest person in that room.
No, she's not good. No, and that's not her job. It's to be the funniest person in that room.
Raoul, who plays Kelrick, is a very good straight man.
Yes.
And the way he delivered, like, what did he say? I have a biting wit or something.
Yes.
So he had some good stuff in there,
and then
too.
A minute later, he's like, and I'm very serious.
Yeah. So that B story, I still prefer a nice connected B story, and there were some kind of thematic connections.
Yeah.
But it made sense for them to because part of this episode is a journey of self-discovery for Sam. And so they kind of had to get out of her way, but she was encouraged properly early on. And there's that nice moment with her and Ake where Ake says, keep talking or say more.
No, you know what she says? She says, talk more.
Yeah.
Or say more or something like that. I wrote it down because I liked it so much. But she says, say more. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, when you see someone's on the right path, but you don't want to tell them what to do as much as just encourage them. And then we got another element with Picardo and the doctor, which we got in the pilot.
Oh, yeah. There was...
he goes back and forth between wanting to help her, Sam, and he's just got calluses on him because he remembers everyone he's lost in 8 centuries. And he's like, just deal with it. People die.
And she's so new. Like, to her, this concept is, what? You have to deal with losing people? And he's like, yeah. And you can see he's haunted. There's a moment. He's such a good actor because he's goofy and whatever, but he also, I think, played the weight of that very nicely.
Yeah. I just hope to see more of this. Yeah, and I think we will, where he's slowly but surely mentoring her, but they're not rushing it. One could say some of the stuff with Seven and the Doctor was rushed, but that's, Voyager were just like this episode, like, this is happening now.
Yeah, they were in a different situation too.
But I think it is working for sure. But this was all about the Sisko. And, my question is, I think there's some people, when this episode was telegraphed and people were calling it a love letter, which is what they said about the Enterprise finale. So that's always a problematic term.
Yeah, and that episode of Strange New Worlds.
Yeah. There were so many ways that this could have gone wrong, I feel. And there are some people, I've talked to people I respect who did not like this episode. So there's some people where it just didn't click, which I find fascinating, because these are people who are not haters and that, but it's not going to work for everyone. But it's mostly what I've seen, including some skeptics out there, really enjoyed this episode, really felt like they, I saw some people who had already decided how much they were going to screw up Sisko.
Oh, yeah. No, I saw a lot of that. They're going to have him do this and they're going to have him do that. I'm like, why don't you just watch it and then decide if you like what they did or not?
And we're going to hear more about this later of how Cirroc and Tawny, this was obviously the topic of many conversations between them to get it right.
Yeah, over a long period of time, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This episode could not have happened without Cirroc, not just as an actor, but with all the Avery stuff and just making it all fit together and keeping it respectful, which it did.
Yeah. Also, his acting is great. He is like completely Jake, grown up Jake. And that is not something that you get to see normally. Like the show is however many years old. Right. And he was a kid and he grew up on the show and it ended a hell of a long time ago. And now here he is as the same character growing up. That is a rarity. That is a gift.
Here's how I think of it is that he is playing Jake, but he's just also playing Cirroc. When Cirroc talks about Ben Sisko, he's talking about Avery Brooks, who is kind of a father to him. And he talks about what he's learned from Avery. It's almost like he just has to be himself. And I'm not saying he wasn't good in this. Yeah,
like to me, it's still very much acting.
Of course.
I think.
I couldn't do it.
But it it's not how I define acting, but yes. But I do agree that those things are intertwined because the relationship that he had and still has with Avery is unique. And it is part of those scenes on Deep Space Nine. And I've talked to Cirroc about this, and I think people read it in interviews anyway. Like all of that comfortable, very natural intimacy that the two of them had, the two actors also shared.
Yeah.
On set of Deep Space Nine. And I think that a lot of people didn't have intimate friendships necessarily with Avery because I think he sets boundaries and rules. And he and Cirroc just have a very unique and special relationship. So yes, I agree that he was also talking about him in all of that.
Yeah. So, and I think the fact that Cirroc has rewatched all of Deep Space Nine recently and reviewed it. A lot of these actors don't know their characters that as well because they haven't watched it for so long. Now they're all
doing podcasts.
Well, now everyone's got a podcast. Yeah, we're still waiting for Shatner to I'd love to watch William Shatner rewatching himself from the 60s.
Oh my God, I would kill to be in the room while that was happening.
Yeah, that will never happen, of course.
No, I know.
But I think that helps him to get back into character. And I was really glad he came back at the end because I thought the recording was nice. It was
the scene at the end that, like, when he first appeared in the recording, I teared up. But it was that second conversation, and especially when he took her hand, that I just had happy tears streaming down my face, but lots of them.
Speaking of Jake, there was the subtle when Caleb is sitting over the railing eating a jumja stick, which was chewy, by the way. I always thought they were sort of like popsicles.
Oh no, I think I always thought they were chewy. They almost look meaty. I love that they brought back jumja sticks because I always remember jumja sticks. When I was at After Trek and we were doing trivia and stuff, I wanted to do this whole thing with a jumja stick, and the rest of the team, they were all Star Trek fans and none of them knew what a jumja stick was. And I was like, we have a problem. How can you guys not know?
Well, it's hard to know all these little things. They were probably wondering, like, what's too deep of a cut, and what makes sense and what doesn't. I mean, certain things don't make sense. Like when you look at them, there's no why is that typewriter there? Doesn't make sense,
right?
But it's there.
But the jumja stick is a perfect example of how to put something there for the fans that doesn't exclude new people. Like, they didn't tell a joke that other people won't get in a way that it would fall flat. It was a moment to someone else. Oh, he's just eating a weird thing. To us, It's a jumja stick. And that was those kinds of touches are what made this episode work really well, is that they found that balance, because you can overdo it and you can underdo it. And this is, to me, calibrated perfectly.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think I like this, but it's an interesting choice of how we never see Benjamin Sisko. We see his silhouette, we hear his voice, we see his uniform, we see his baseball, but we never see him. Not once. They showed a little Nimoy Spock on Discovery. We've seen them do stuff with recordings or images before when they want to evoke a character, but they kept him as a mysterious figure, a religious figure, almost.
Which makes sense, because that is still what he is, and that's kind of the whole question they were exploring, right?
Right. They leaned into the word prophet because Ake says the Bajorans don't like to show what he looks like, which is very much like Muslims and the Prophet Muhammad. So, no, I thought it was an interesting choice. Some people are like, oh, they didn't want to pay Avery to use his likeness. I'm like, that's not it. It was a choice.
No, that's not it. No, it was a creative choice, and I believe echoed the theme beautifully. Was the right choice. I did like when they called him Schrodinger's prophet.
Yeah. Well, because they were the kids who didn't know who he was, except for Genesis, because she's so smart and always knows everything. We're just kind of like, oh, he's some old guy and he's probably dead, because everyone in the 24th century is dead unless you're a god or a lanthanite.
Or a hologram. Or Flint. Oh, sorry. That's another thing.
No, I think they let the other kids sort of fade into the background, but they let some of their stories, Tarima and Caleb got to kiss, whatever.
Well, they got to make up, but they also gave them moments. Like Jaden spitting out the bad Racticino. Also Jaden and Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Dancing in the club.
That's happening.
So admiring, giving each other compliments and dancing in the club. So that's kind of fun.
Right, because they're trying to, because Darum is sort of leading the we hate everyone at the war college, but Jaden's like, well, I don't hate this guy.
Right. Which started a while ago where he's like, what do you do? So, yeah, because, Kyle's been giving Jaden the eye for many episodes now.
Yeah, something's going on there.
Oh, now it's fully going on because they're saying things to each other and they danced.
That's true. That's true. In fact, that was how the fight started, because the War College guys said that they were slumming. Both. Right. Actually, everyone was saying they were slumming, because obviously the Tarima and Caleb thing is also happening.
Right, but they went outside.
Okay.
They weren't making out in front of everybody.
Well, we have yet to see Jaden and Kyle kiss.
But they were dancing. They were
yeah,
very obviously into each other. I mean, Kyle had stripped down to a tank top.
Was this the first episode we saw Jaden wearing the scant? The 32nd century scant? I think it
probably.
Is. That was seen in like promotional stuff. And of course, the usual suspects lost their minds. It's like scants have been part of Star Trek for a long time.
The very first episode of Next Gen.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of went out of fashion, and now they're back in fashion again.
It's fine, yeah.
Never seen a Klingon in one. That's new. But,
sure.
He's a different kind of Klingon.
He sure is. But I feel like the big thing we're not talking about, though, is Sam. Can we talk about Sam and Carice for a minute? Because her performance was amazing, and having met her and spoken to her, and yes, that energy is her, but she's also very much like the woman herself has a confidence and a style and an edge. And this character is so sweet and naive and authentic, and just you watch her face and you see all the emotion. You can feel the emotion. You feel the confusion. You feel the sense of wonder, like when a little kid is learning things. I think she had to be great to make the episode work. And you had to believe that she felt this connection to Sisko. And I felt it the whole time. She was the perfect character for this story. And she delivered a great performance.
Yeah, and a very difficult performance. She had to laugh. She had to cry. She had to be drunk. They really threw a lot at her. Carice, she's bubbly and cute and funny.
But she's also, I feel like when I met her, I felt more of a strength than I see in Sam.
Certainly. Yeah. And I met her as well, and she is infectious, but she had some acting experience before this. She had some good reviews. They obviously,
she's a dancer, which they made use of.
I suspect they knew this episode was coming when they hired her or something like this. They're just very good at casting.
Yes.
And I have yet to see someone who just feels ill-suited for their role. And
in this show, yeah.
Yeah. And I hope, last week was the Jaden episode. Every episode before that was essentially a Caleb episode. I suspect before the season ends, we're going to get a Darum episode. We're going to get a Genesis episode.
I hope so. I would really like that.
We could already tell that they have what's going on to pull it off their episodes as well. But Carice did a great job.
Should we talk about Tawny's performance?
As soon as I heard the voice, because they introduced the character she's like way in the back of the room and as an alien, and so you don't notice her at first, but then as soon as she says something, I'm like, oh my god, Tawny put herself in the episode.
Yeah, the minute she spoke.
By the way, there is actually much more to that story, but I just assumed, because when I remember speaking to her on the red carpet about her comedy show, and I asked her, oh well, are you writing a role for yourself? And she's like, duh,
yeah, exactly.
Of course I am. But it wasn't like that for this, but she was great. I did not see the twist coming at all.
Same.
They hid the spots. But again, it didn't feel, I hate to bring it up, but I'm thinking about Strange New World Season 3 and where they just throw in a cue at the end or stuff like, there's things where you're just like, you didn't need to do this. You're just doing this to do this.
Right.
Someone could argue they did that by throwing Dax in because they already had Jake and Sisko's voice
but there's a reason it was a Dax.
Right.
There's a reason, and that's why she would have the book, because someone else wouldn't have it. And I also think when I look at all the live action shows and this one, I go, well, this couldn't have been what it is without a lot of the missteps of some of the previous shows. I think they learned, but the biggest difference, obviously, with Starfleet Academy, I think, is that they actually had the kind of time they didn't have with the others to work on a whole season of scripts. It's very obvious that things weren't rushed and crazy, and they didn't have strikes and COVID and all kinds of other things going on.
I am worried about season 2 because it does. I do wonder if they rushed season 2 to get it out the door before someone could shut them down, like David Ellison coming in.
I'm going to guess that they had started right. Somehow they must have at least had some kind of a plan or something. But you could be right. I hope you're wrong, but you could be right. But I think that they really learned a lot by watching those other shows, and not just the reaction, because the truth is different fans react to different things. But I think they learned, even just as writers, like, oh, this is how to balance it. This is how to do it. And it just can't come from a place of looky, pointing at something. There has to be a reason for it. And in this episode, I felt like there really was. And it tied so much into Sam's mission and who she is and how she views herself and how she's going to grow as a person.
Yeah, this episode was all about Sam. It was not about Sisko.
Right. It was about Sam.
Everyone remember Sisko because he has such an overwhelming presence. But this was it was a very simple story. It was a coming of age story. It was like a Disney story. It's like, believe in yourself. That's what it all was about.
Well, and the big thing, when she found out what an emissary was, and she's so upset by the fact that she perceives it as he didn't get to choose, and he was forced to do something he didn't want to do and give up the things he wanted. And she starts to fear that that's going to be the path for her, to the point that she just decides, oh, that's it. I failed. I give up. This is bad. And he was unlucky. And then the whole thing turns around. So it's a beautiful story.
Yeah. And, she had to, the way they created this interesting parallel between her creators and the wormhole prophets. So every once in a while, her creators would stop time and have a chat with her.
Yes. I was getting confused. Sometimes confused by that. I'm like, is she remembering that they had a chat? No, I think they actually had the chat right there.
Well, they did both, actually. She
said it started a week ago, and then we see that. But when she was standing there with everybody, and then they spoke to her.
Yeah, but she's basically talking to her dad, kind of, or her dads. So this was a subtle thing that I didn't notice until my second playthrough, because usually I look for guest star names in the final credits. But there was a special guest star in the main credits that I didn't notice because I didn't know who was doing the voice, but her creators were voiced by Chiwetel Ejiofor. How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Ejiofor.
Ejiofor.
But I'm not 100% sure.
British actor, 12 Years a Slave.
Oh, yeah, super famous, big time. Yeah.
Yeah. He was also in Serenity, Firefly, so he had some sci-fi cred. Amazing actor who worked with Alex on The Man Who Fell to Earth, which didn't work out for either of them, but they knew each other. But I'm
wondering if he's a Star Trek fan and said, throw me a bone.
Maybe.
Or if Alex just thought, oh, let's get him because it would be fun.
Another Oscar nominee.
There you
go.
For
the show. But he was great. She learned to stand up to him.
Yeah.
The stakes obviously were they are going to shut off all access and she'll have to come home and she can never leave. And she's already developed these friendships and she would stop having a body, which she was enjoying.
It's exactly the Sisko thing. This is the life she chose.
Yeah.
Right? And she doesn't want to be taken away from it.
Just like Ben wanted to marry Cassidy. It all fits. It's strange how well it all fits. It's just so much thought went into this. There just doesn't have any feeling of things slapped on, things member berries, that kind of stuff.
No, it was all so grounded in her story and emotionally connected. I would have liked, in terms of Sisko, the one missing thing, I would like to have heard something about Cassidy and their kid because she was pregnant.
Yeah, the kid was not on.
I was trying to look at the family tree, but stuff was covering it up. As soon as you get in there's a thing that covered, like the Jake thing covers it up. So you can't, it says Cassidy, but you can only see part of it. So I'm like, oh, there must have been another thing there, but you can't see it. And I know they know about it, obviously, because
it was a choice.
knows and Tawny knows. Yeah.
Obviously they could have brought Penny in. There were many people they could have brought into this episode to create holograms.
Well, just to mention, it would have been nice if Jake had said, my little brother or sister or something like that. That's all he had to do.
But he did talk about the importance of Cassidy and the relationship and the family.
And how important she was to Ben Sisko, who said who married her anyway.
And they didn't, they didn't mention Odo, and they didn't mention Kira or Worf or O'Brien.
Which was smart. They were not part of the story. They actually had nothing, because it wasn't a story about Deep Space Nine space station.
No, they didn't visit the DS9 station. They didn't tell us if it still exists. Is it a museum?
They didn't go around the pylons.
Yeah, exactly. Tawny says that the script, a lot of stuff was cut because she wrote a ridiculously long script. So the extended version of this is probably interesting. I would be surprised if there's she couldn't help herself and someone had to tell her no for a couple of things. Although there is one Easter egg she kept on demanding, kept being cut, and she kept on putting back in, which we'll get into in her interview.
That's in your interview. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what else we really have to say about this episode. Are there any, more? I mean, we've talked about a lot of Easter eggs. Were there any others that you particularly loved?
Oh, Easter eggs? I saw Laurie in the background.
Oh, there's so much alien activity happening.
I like the Organian cadet starts sniffing Caleb for pheromones.
Organian? Orion.
Oh, sorry, Orion. Yes, I wrote Organian, but it's Orion. It starts with O. It ends in N. The Orion cadet who hears about pheromones and then comes up to sniff him. But there were also there were great little moments. I was very happy to see Jackie Cox got a small role in the show. So Jackie Cox is someone who's been hosts Star Trek-like events and different things.
On RuPaul Drag Race.
There you go.
But big Star Trek fan.
Yes, and I've seen her at events doing some interviewing and hosting and things like that. And so to give her, it's nice when they give a fan a role like that. Just a quick, perfect. She was the one in the bar, brought them the shots. Although when people are about to fight, I wouldn't bring them shots.
I guess it worked, so she knows what she's doing.
Well, no, they did have a fight. It didn't work.
Oh, that's true. But not at that point. There was the fight. It wasn't the fight later, but it's good for them to get off the campus. I like that. Get into. I still would have liked an establishing shot. As someone who used to live in San Francisco, I'm like, where is this bar? What street is it on? Can I go there sometime?
But for the millions of us who haven't lived there, that offers nothing.
Yeah, but I presumably it was in San Francisco somewhere.
I mean, they'd have to build a futuristic it's interesting. We were talking about this in our Slack with other people at Trek Movie who were saying it would have been nice to have her beam to the Sisko Museum
in New Orleans.
In New Orleans. And my feeling is if you're deciding where to spend your money, they made the right choice not to build a whole set for a Sisko Museum.
For such an amazing episode, this was a cheap bottle episode, very much like Data's Day. They did not they did not spend money on anything big. Last episode had maybe not that big of a space battle, but they had to do a space battle.
Very easily won space battle.
Yeah, but they did a lot of location shooting. Last episode was pretty expensive. I have a feeling that there's some more expensive stuff coming up. So that's the good thing is that sometimes mid-season bottle episodes can be outstanding by doing something interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, they didn't visit New Orleans, which would have been nice.
But I didn't need it. I really do feel like they have to make choices. I mean, they did spend money making those weird spoons.
And the little horns.
There's the little megaphones and the spoons that had the hole in the middle, which is I do remember there's some silly Voyager episodes with weird rituals. There's all kinds of fun.
Oh, I mean, it was very Star Trek.
Trope. It's such a fun Star Trek trope.
We're going to meet this weird alien race and they like to do a weird alien thing.
And they have to stand here and do this or they get offended and stuff like that. Also just that Kenrick was actually heating up the ocean.
Just part of it.
Just part of it. For the eels. What if they're attacked on land? I thought that was...
And at one point, I'm like, I want to meet these weird aliens and see their weird. And I realized that's not the point of that whole thing.
Exactly. And there are times where in other Star Trek shows where you're like, oh, they should have shown it. But this one, it actually was fine that they didn't, because that wasn't what it was about at all. And
no.
Yeah, it wasn't. And it was about also them, like Ake and Kenrick, realizing like they shouldn't be echoing the rivalry of their students.
Yeah, I guess it's going to take that time to bubble down to the, as I call them in my reviews, the warholes.
Yeah, I thought that was a good word.
Especially the Vulcan guy and the Romulan girl. And are they dating? That's the question.
I don't get that vibe.
No, I just think they're buddies. I think they have united in hate.
Yes.
Of the Academy for whatever reason.
But the point was that he's kind of doing the same thing to her, and he's very, from the minute he saw her, he was quite taken aback by her manner, which now we know more of where that comes from and why he felt that way. Also, her outfit, I loved her casual outfit that was like sort of pants, but sort of also a skirtish. It was very.
No, are we talking about Sam's outfit?
No,
Whose
Ake.
outfit? Oh, Ake's outfit. Sorry.
She had her casual loungewear. It was like these pants, but there was an extra like flappy, almost skirt-like thing. Anyway, it looked very Holly Hunter.
This show does have a significant wardrobe budget for sure.
Oh my God.
A lot of characters get a lot of different outfits.
Yes.
Much more than you would see on the older shows.
I was looking when he flung the giant scarf at Sam, when Caleb did that. I feel like those were from Discovery. Do you remember when Saru and Tilly went on their little mission when they first got into the future? I feel like they wore these giant things with giant scarves. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, well, hopefully they are, saving
hopefully
money by
finding
stuff in the back of the closet. Yeah, I mean they've got a lot of stuff hanging around. Speaking of Discovery, I remember you and I talking. It was season 5 when they visited Trill, or was that season 4? I think it was season 5 when Culber got taken over by Trill.
Yeah. Janelle.
And we talked about like, could they have put Dax in that episode? Would it have worked? And now it's like, thank God they didn't. Right? I mean, I guess they could have put Dax in this, but there
would have been no reason to. Like, again, in that case, for why? Just to say Dax?
Exactly. It would have been purely just to do it. And they didn't, which is good. And especially good now that they kept that open.
Yeah.
The museum, was a bit of indulgence. I mean, when you look around, there's the, Guardian Forever and there was all sorts of, but they weren't too in your face about it. The only one that
they didn't point at it and stop the action and make the music really loud and whatever. it's there. If you want to look and zoom in and notice it, you'll see the Guardian of Forever and a bunch of other things. And
the
if
baseball stuff, you knew they'd do a little baseball stuff. So that they did kind of point at the baseball stuff, I would say.
But I mean the screen, like all the screen stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's
that
there
stuff
to look
was
at
all
and there to not look at, whatever you want.
Yeah, but I'm sure people are having a ball, and they because of all this whole on-screen graphic thing, they had this whole on-screen graphic for Darum, so you could read all about Darum if you freeze frame, and some of her stuff had some interesting stuff in it, her little freeze frames of her control system. It made me think, because it showed like all of these choices of her body, right? She has a human body, but it had other choices on there. And she's a hologram, can she just become a Ferengi, which was one of the choices. They spelled Ferenginar wrong, by the way, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I think there was more than one typo. But that's okay. I don't like it, but it's a minor issue.
Because we're learning more and more about Sam. It'd be interesting to see if more hologram powers from her.
Yeah, because didn't she disguise herself as the mascot?
Yeah.
So she can be whatever.
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I want to know more about her parameters.
Yes.
As they say.
There was an interesting thing where she wants to get into the class. And Professor Tawny, says like, you can't do that. And she's like, well, I could just download, like, because we've talked about this. The whole reason she's at the school is to get the experience, but she did kind of admit, well, I don't really have to do it that way. I could just program the class into my brain.
Right.
But that's
and then the
cheating.
Point her professor needed to make, it wasn't even just that was cheating, but that's not what the class is about.
Exactly.
And that's the bigger point, I think.
Because it's more than just knowledge. It's wisdom.
I have some favorite lines. Can we do a couple of those?
Sure.
I'll try to keep it small. There were many. There were many, many good ones. I really, really liked your paw is strong. Thanks. Yours too, I'm assuming. Which was Sam.
Well, but getting back to the body, I mean, first of all, I never understood what the hell a paw was, but how does she have a strong paw? She's a hologram body.
Yeah,
so does that mean she has a soul? So let's get all metaphysical.
No, but anyway. I also get the feeling that maybe some of these people running the Bajor Club don't really know what they're doing and they're winging it.
So they just say everyone has your paw
I feel
strong.
like they kind of, yeah.
It's kind of like saying, how you doing? Your paw is strong.
That's what right. And then when he goes and she tries to do it back. So I thought that was really fun. I liked, and now a request from the gift pig. And then Reno goes, oh, right, I'm the pig. And she also says, good thing I'm hilarious, she says. And then also when Sam is really drunk and she goes, why is everybody so squiggly? It's just, and that's just, I had 20 more listed, but those were some of my favorites.
I don't know if I had any favorite lines.
Oh my God, I had so many. I have to say I have many from every, I mean, come on. She says, where are you on the tomato debate? I'm like, that's a good quote just by itself.
Yeah.
Also, watching her bite into a tomato was gross.
Even Sam noticed that was gross. But she's a Cardassian. Who knows what, like, Cardassian? They drink Canar, which is like drinking syrup. So
I just hate tomatoes. I think they're gross.
Fair enough.
It's my own personal thing.
I just want to eat at Sisko's restaurant. I love Creole food to begin with, and it just looks delicious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the okra or keep the vegetables out, but I'm very interested in the spicy whatever else there is. I also liked that Sam thought the prophets were jerks.
Well, she was corrected on that, as it were, but she basically, she doesn't like authority figures pushing people around.
Right. The prophets to Sisko are her people to her. It's the same thing.
Yeah, but she learned you can control those people.
Well, you can stand up. She learned that she could stand up to them, which is what Sisko did. Unless
it didn't work and the casks send another emissary because she cut them off. Maybe, maybe there's repercussions of what she did. We'll see.
We'll see. But I think the point was Sisko found a way to be Sisko also. And so she's finding her way as well. I feel like we should play some of the great stuff that we got from these folks.
Okay, so let's do this in chronological order. Let's do the blue carpet interview that you did in January with Tawny.
Did you talk to Cirroc before writing it? How was the order of those things? He's so great in it.
He's amazing. He is incredible. I have had so many... Getting that episode made was such a gargantuan feat, and I've had so many partners locked arm in battle between Noga Landau, between Cirroc, Alex. I've had so many people, Aaron Byers, they've come to my aid to help me push this thing. My co-writer Kirsten Beyer, who's been such a fierce advocate from jump. But Laurie, I don't even know where to start, but all I can tell you is that it was seemingly so impossible to be able to address the hugeness of the Sisko story with some of the limitations that we have because of canon, some of the limitations that we have because of available actors, and we really just wanted to honor the man, Avery Brooks. We wanted to honor the character, Sisko. We wanted to honor that show, which in the franchise has had the least rebooting, the least, it's my absolute favorite, and I just wanted to celebrate it and not put a close to his story, but just put a little, just a feeling of completion for one part of it, to just give some of us some resolution. And yeah, to answer your question in a short way, Cirroc and I were on the phone and at lunches for months and months and months and months trying to figure out how we could get this done. Yeah.
Well, it paid off, that's for sure. The voice at the end, is that, I don't recognize it, but is that just something I don't recognize from Deep Space Nine, the voice of it? What is that?
It is not from Deep Space Nine. That is a private recording that belonged to Mr. Brooks that he very graciously allowed us to use. And I still get chills thinking about how it came to be because I was very anxious asking him for anything because this man has given so much of his artistry, his life, and himself to this franchise. And I was very conscious of not wanting to ask him for another thing. But we needed some sign at the end that he had heard her. And he very graciously allowed us to have this. And then the full force of thanks to the studio, again to Noga and Alex, Aaron Byers, they all really moved heaven and earth to make it happen. I couldn't be more grateful.
Fully paid off.
I have to say, I interviewed her on the carpet. It was very hectic. There was a lot of stuff going on. It was a very celebratory evening and mood. And she gets emotional right in the middle. I don't know if you can, I still hear it, but I also know because I was there for the moment. But she got almost choked up when she started talking about Avery. It was quite moving.
I've seen her talk about DS9 and Avery on panels and in person, and it means so much to her, which is why, whenever I see someone online chiming as if they're, they know better, and there is no one who loves Avery Brooks and Deep Space Nine more than Tawny Newsome. And say that to her face is all I have to say. If you have a problem. Now, there could be a legitimate thing, but drive-by BS, everything was better in the 90s comments it's just, this was made with love, genuinely love.
If you look at her intentions, they came from a place of she loves the story. She loves these characters. She wanted to honor them. She wanted to follow it up. And it came from her heart and her creative soul. And it's so obvious. And Kirsten too. Kirsten's was writing Star Trek books before she was ever involved with the shows. This is a world that she loves also.
Yeah, a lot of the heart of this episode. In fact, let's hear because one great thing about Tawny is she knows that it takes a village. And so we learn a lot more about all the people that helped make this happen in my interview with Tawny and Cirroc, which we should play now.
How are you?
Hey.
We missed you at the premiere.
Yeah, Laurie was there, but hopefully I'll see you soon. Vegas. So, this episode, mega lore, obviously. It's just, insane. So, given that the show is somewhat or maybe primarily to bring in new audiences, have be an entry point, how much, was there pushback? Was anyone this is too much canon?
No one said those words to my face. Whether they said them about the episode, I think they knew better than to say it to me because I was pretty adamant that this episode, it was our job to make this an homage, a celebration, and really a bit of a correction for what I feel has been an oversight in a lot of modern Trek. We haven't talked nearly enough about the Siskos, about Benjamin Sisko, or about the show Deep Space Nine at all, despite it being a massive addition to our canon. So I was pretty adamant, I'll say. I was frothing at the mouth some days about how important this was. So if anyone thought it was too much canon, they shared those details among themselves.
Cirroc, this is an obvious question, but I'm just curious, what did you do to prep? And how, can you talk about how maybe you got Tawny to put some stuff in maybe about where Jake is at these days?
Most of the prep work was conversations with Avery that I probably will not discuss. But there was getting his permission and his blessing, essentially. And, that was the biggest thing for me because obviously this is an homage to him and I wanted him to like it. I want him to be satisfied with it. first and foremost. At least that was my mission going into it. So it's almost like I'm performing for an audience of one.
Wow.
And that's how, that was my mindset. But then going into it, the amount of, back and forth that we had was great because it was a collaborative effort. It was like, where would we be comfortable talking about these things? How do we talk about them? I got a chance to be a part of designing the wardrobe. So that was like an opportunity for me to have kind of a hands-on on what we're going to see on screen. And so, yeah, my mindset was huge opportunity, new show, and a chance to tell Avery I love you.
I shaved my head in honor of the Sisko. Has he seen it? Any feedback?
I don't know if he's seen it yet, but he has read it, and it was really important for us, the writers, to get his blessing at multiple steps along the way. So he, thanks to Cirroc, who deserves an executive producer credit for this episode, he was well aware of things, maybe even before I was authorized to share them. I was like, we got to make sure Mr. Brooks is cool with this.
So another interesting character. As soon as I heard the voice, I'm like, oh, I knew she'd write herself into it. But, what was that, was there ever any question that you'd write yourself in? And was there any, you made yourself a Dex? I mean, seriously, that's like, did you ever think, okay, I need to think about this? Or you're like, no, of course I'm going to do that.
No, I was the last piece of this puzzle. I did not intend to write myself in at all because it didn't occur to me that I would be anyone other than Mariner, and I thought it would be a little too cheeky to have, some future version of Mariner or some descendant. It just seemed too irreverent for the magnitude of this episode. So no, Professor Isla was constructed by me and Kirsten as she was meant to be the perfect shepherd for this story. It was so important that we had someone who it made sense that she would have the only copy of Jake's book. A lot of intentionality went into who could this be. And then when we all kind of went, oh, the Trill lifespan could be this long. This could be Dax. It really excited Noga Landau, our showrunner. It excited all of us. And we went, okay, yeah, let's make this Dax. And then, as I said, I was the last piece of the puzzle. When we said, okay, and Tawny's going to do it, was quite a surprise, I think, for all of us, but I had really great support from showrunners and from Kirsten.
So she's like Cardassian, Bajoran, and Trill?
No Bajoran.
Oh, because the nose, it looks a little Majoran, so I was trying to figure that out.
It looks a little Majoran, didn't it? No, I think we're just saying, we decided that she was just Cardassian and Trill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Cirroc. What was it like for you working specifically with Carice, but maybe in general, because you're surrounded by all these young actors, there must have been a deja vu. Did you have any advice for teenagers working on, well, none of them, I guess, are teenagers, but, young people playing teenagers, perhaps, working on Star Trek?
Yeah, well, it used to be the other way around, where I was the young guy on the set. Now I'm the old guy.
Yeah.
Which is great. Finally, I got my revenge. No, look, Carice is just phenomenal. She's got it.
Yeah.
And, she can hit the ground running and she doesn't need any help. I was just admiring how talented she is. And so there was nothing there for me to have to work on as far as, getting my feet wet. I was just placed in there. I got a hold of it right away. We had Larry Tang, who was doing an excellent job of directing and just, making everybody feel comfortable, making me feel comfortable as the guest on the set. And, I was happy to be around the young cadets because, you get that energy of enthusiasm. Everybody's excited. Everybody's, part of a new show. This is the first season. It hadn't released yet, so I kind of did my best to tell Carice what she's what to expect as far as conventions and fandom and, people recognizing her. So I don't know. I did my best to prepare her for the other side of the fandom, which is,
Right. Yeah.
going to be, waiting for her very shortly.
Yeah. And no advice for Sandro on how to lean over the railing and eat a jomja stick?
Yeah.
I fought for that jumja stick.
I was so happy to see that too. I was like, finally, somebody else gets to eat one of those jumja sticks.
I didn't know jomja sticks were chewy, but that's a whole. I guess that's canon now.
Yeah, they're chewy.
So, but I'm curious. Getting back to Carice, this is for you, Tawny. This episode is structured in a fascinating way. Breaks some rules, but also kind of reminds me a lot of Data's Day, and obviously DS9 is a huge thing, but were you drawing from that episode or other episodes when you were looking at the structure, or does it just kind of end up that way?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about Data's Day. Maybe Kirsten was. I can't speak for her, but so the format break for this episode was Alex Kurtzman's idea. He said from jump, this is a special episode. Who we're honoring, the character we're using to honor this person she's our non-organic character. Like, it should look and feel different. So he gave us permission from the beginning to really break form and be very free. And so I think we were just so inspired by the fact that we don't know much about caste yet. And so we got to be the architects of this new species. And the fact that they process information so differently gave us the liberty to process the information differently for the medium, for the audience. And it just also spoke to my tendencies as a writer, which are a little bit outside of this genre. This is my first time writing narrative TV. I've written a lot of sketch, and I primarily only do comedy. So while this episode has incredible heart, largely thanks to Kirsten, the format break was more suited to my style of writing, the only person in my life who's read nearly everything I've written is Alex Kurtzman. So I think that was intentional on his part.
Well, there was a lot of like on-screen graphics and just an insane amount of stuff happening in the background. And I was curious, was that all post or on set, or were you writing all these kind of crazy things into it?
So there are a lot of little moments that you just kind of catch on second rewatches. So the on-screen stuff was in script, most of it. And then some of it got added in post, but a lot of that was scripted into the story. When Kirsten and I first turned in this script, I am not ashamed. I'm very proud to admit this is a 72-page draft, which is nuts, but we just had so much ground to cover. But one of the things that Alex Kurtzman and I had been talking about for all of the episodes, as he asked me to help him shape some of the comedy throughout the whole series, is we talked about background characters and small moments of downbeats, the things that you only get away with in a school setting and in a show like this. We drew a lot of inspiration from the movie Booksmart, where you're just kind of catching characters that aren't necessarily the focal point, living full lives, having, moments that on second watch you kind of go, oh, what's that guy doing over there? So I just kind of took that for my episode and really ran with it. And then our director, Larry Tang, was also so great because on set I could just pitch him, dumb little bits or, little physical moments to add in to have background characters doing. And he was really on board.
So there's a question for both of you. And I hopefully I've got the history of this right, but as I understand it, for the finale of DS9, it was important for Avery for Sisko to say he was going to return in some form because he didn't want to be that guy who was, abandoning someone. So, I'm curious if, when you were getting into telling Sisko, following up on that, how did that factor in? And it's still a little ambiguous. Like, did you ever think let's just bring him back or let's give a definitive answer? So I'm just curious how both of you feel about how Sisko's fate is handled in this and that.
Yes. Cirroc, do you want to take this one? I feel like I've been answering the version of this all day. I'm curious to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, it is known that, he wasn't happy with the way, the character kind of ended his on-screen journey. It was adamant that, Sisko would be dedicated to raising his family and, watching his son Jake grow up. and, you know, having gotten married and having a kid on the way, those were those kind of the loose tail ends that he didn't want to see just go up in smoke with this death of Sisko. So I believe that him being insistent on saying, I'll be back, I will return, I think that was in there to say, no, he didn't abandon his family. No, he didn't let anybody down. He's going to make sure that he's going to watch Jake and his family grow up. And so we revisit that with this episode, and we kind of acknowledge that he doesn't leave, that he is there. We don't specifically say when and where and to how and to what extent and how often. But Jake is saying that, you know, he never left. He was there. He felt his presence. He had moments with him. And I think that's important to kind of honor how Avery wanted Sisko to be remembered.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was massively important to all of us in the writer's room to honor that request. And then we had to square that with the fact that we have seen a lot added to the canon, and there hasn't been any mention of seeing him. So that puts you in a little bit of a storytelling quandary. How do we say this man came back, yet nobody's talked about him, and we haven't seen hide nor hair of him? So we sort of had to get into the territory of something that maybe science and Starfleet records can't explain. And so that's why we wanted to put it in Jake's mouth at the end, where he literally says, I can't prove it, but all those things you think he missed, he didn't. He was there.
Okay. It looks like I've got to wrap up. If there's a quick thing, what's your favorite deep Easter egg for either of you in this episode?
I made them put in Carice saying some version of I can live with it. And someone who kept doing a version of the script later kept taking it out, and I kept putting it back in probably 7 or 8 times. And, finally it made it to filming.
Great. Okay.
My favorite Easter egg is Benny Russell's typewriter that was in the museum, because technically that doesn't exist in
right.
the world.
I was like, okay, how's that there? But
I love it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, and
thank you.
Hopefully, we could talk more on the pod about this, because we all love it so much.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thank you.
Okay.
It is interesting to hear her talk about Alex in your interview and my interview, and the people around Alex, like Noga and Aaron Byers, who people don't talk about a lot, but works with Alex at Secret Hideout. But a lot of the smart things done in this episode, the episode structure and just making sure that this happened, all came from Alex, who hired Tawny because he knew the show needed humor. Tawny's been doing a funny, a pass on every script to make them funnier and add stuff to the background, which she was just talking about. I mean, this kind of reminds me of Rick Berman, like everyone, remember when it was everyone's favorite hobby to crap on Rick Berman?
Oh, it still is.
But I was just listening to an interview with Cole Meany, and he was talking about what a great guy Rick was, and how Rick was a man of his word and let him go in acting, and
Tim Russ says the same thing. Like, he says that the opportunities that he got, Rick Berman was his champion, and the reason that you saw Tim Russ in all of these things before Tuvok, he says Gene didn't like him and Rick did, and Rick kept fighting for him, and then gave him a role. Like, I think that both of these people, I'm sure the negatives are true. People are more than one thing. And so there's all kinds of stuff going on with these guys. But when Alex sees something, he has a good eye for spotting talented people, and he gives them opportunities. Whether it's just, you know what, Tig Notaro's funny and she's my friend and we're going to create a role because she's fun. Or like Tawny, he was like, bring me your stuff, show me your writing. Because he knew that that's what she was doing, and she earned the opportunity, but someone had to give it to her, and he gave it to her.
And this episode would not have happened without Tawny, and Tawny doesn't happen without Alex.
Yes.
So, I mean, she would, I'm sure, have a wonderful career, and she'd be doing comedy stuff
for sure.
and whatever.
She's immensely talented. She'd be acting and writing and producing and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but she would not be in the writer's room of a drama on another show, probably. He made that happen.
Right. Yes. And he made it happen because he recognized the talent that was there.
But getting back to the love and, hearing what Cirroc had to say was really, and what he had to say about Avery, I didn't know. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously still very close, and it's good to know that Avery waved his magical wand over this episode in his own special way. I'm sure he said some cool jazzy thing about it.
That nobody understood but Cirroc.
Yeah, exactly. If you haven't had a chance, watch the documentary called The Captain's Close-Up, I think it was. It was one of the Shatner things he did for the Epics channel, which doesn't exist anymore. Produced by the people who do, the DS9 doc and the Voyager doc.
Oh, yeah.
But Shatner went around and did half-hour interviews with all the other captains. And
the Avery Brooks one is
insane. It is it's so jazz. It's just like,
it's very improvised. It just has this jazzy feel to it. You got to get into the rhythm of it, or you're just not. You're not going to understand what's going on.
And it's one of the last things Avery Brooks did professionally. And, he hasn't been doing conventions. He hasn't been acting. He's retired. He's out of public life. So it's worth checking that out. I guess that's, I guess we're done, right? Are you done?
I think that's it. I could keep talking about the episode, but maybe I'll just go watch it again.
Isn't it amazing that we are halfway through the first season? I
can't believe it. I can't believe that we're halfway through the first season, and I can't believe how strong it is.
Yeah, it's better than I still just did not like episode 3. it just sits there worrying me like, oh God, how many more of these are there? How many more YA annoying episodes are we going to have to sit through? But in general, I've been impressed with the show, and it seems to be getting better. They learned lessons before they ever got into that room, but they have bills to pay with the YA crowd. And I just say, please keep it balanced. Don't overdo it.
But for the most part, they have been. It was that, the whole rivalry thing in that episode I didn't care about.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think even the drunk stuff is relatable. The college bar stuff is there's so many pieces of it that I think work no matter what.
This was a very YA episode, but worked. YA is not bad.
Exactly.
Anyway, we'll be back next week with episode 6. I haven't watched it yet. You have.
Yes, and that's the last one I've seen because that's all they sent 6. So I don't know what comes next, but I do know that George Hawkins, who plays Durham, told me I will love 7.
I think a lot of people have talked about that one during the press tour. So,
oh really? Okay.
I heard other people talk about 7, and so maybe that's
you're gonna love 7, and I was like, okay.
Well, that's probably the Durham episode, right?
Well, it was probably because I think I was asking him about Keonian stuff.
Right. We get to visit the fish planet, maybe
fish stick
or whatever.
Didn't someone call him a fish stick in this episode?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.